Alright. Hi everyone, my name's Raphael from EnergizeMeFitness. I'm an exercise physiologist and I'm based in Melbourne, Australia at Living Energy Pilates and Rehabilitation, which is my clinic which I started back in 2006. Now I'm a keen runner and typically run between 2 to 4 times a week. I've been fortunate to be mostly injury-free, but I have had to deal with this one particular issue which is extremely common amongst athletes and middle-aged weekend warriors like myself. And that is Achilles tendinopathy. So Achilles tendinopathy is very common with people involved in running and jumping sports and activities. And I can tell you from personal experience that it is painful or can be painful and will restrict your activities. It's typically caused by overuse or a sudden increase in repetitive strain on the tendon connecting the calf to your heel. So a sudden increase in training frequency or extended duration of your training might cause this sort of thing, or might cause it to flare up anyway. Now the Achilles tendon is the strongest tendon in the human body. It can receive a load stress of about 3.9 times your body weight when you're walking and up to 7.7 times your body weight when you're running. It connects the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscles, which are your calf muscles, to the heel bone. I've got a picture here. I'll bring it in fairly close so you can see. You can see the gastroc is the two heads of the gastroc up top, and you can see it, well you can't really see it, but the soleus sits in behind it and they all connect into that white or paler sort of soft tissue, which is your actually Achilles tendon. So yeah, the tendon begins near the middle of the calf, connecting that gastroc muscle, and it receives the fibers of the soleus attaching into the inner side of the Achilles tendon. So the function of the Achilles tendon is really just to plantar flex your ankle, which is to, if your foot is on flat, you would think of pushing downwards through your toes. That's plantar flexion. So it does that while you're walking, and also has an important function when you're running in that it absorbs energy, absorbs that landing force and generates some elastic recoil. So the Achilles tendon is literally the spring in your step. And in my experience, when you have an inflamed Achilles tendon, it's kind of like running with a flat tire. So you've got a nice springy foot on one side where you're running, but the other foot feels really leaden and flat. So that's just how it feels. Now, in terms of diagnosis, Achilles tendinopathy is diagnosed when someone presents with a combination of localized pain over the tendon area and swelling of the Achilles tendon and loss of function. So from an everyday point of view, you'll typically experience symptoms like pain in the Achilles in the morning when you first get up, or even if you've been sitting for a while and you first get up to start walking, it'll be really stiff and sore. There'll be pain along the back of the heel that will often increase with activity, possibly intermittent swelling, pain following exercise, and also possible thickening of the tendon. Now, Achilles tendon injuries can be separated into sort of 3 areas. One is insertional tendinopathy. That's about a quarter of all Achilles tendon issues. Mid-portion tendinopathy, which is a bit over half of the tendon issues. And then what we call proximal musculotendinous junction injuries, which is a smaller percentage, let's say, with the remaining amount. And that really, the way you break it up is really depends on where the pain is. If the pain is right down at the bottom of the tendon where the tendon attaches to the heel, then that's what we would call insertional Achilles tendinopathy. If it's a little higher up, between 2 to 5 centimeters up the tendon, then that would be what you call mid-portion tendinopathy. Or if it's obviously up here, up higher where the muscle fibers are first sort of connecting into the tendon, then that's your musculotendinous junction tendinopathy. Tendinopathies are described typically as a degeneration or a failed healing due to continuous overload without appropriate recovery. And at the tissue level, tendinopathy is characterized by what we call localized or diffuse increases in thickness, that's the tendinosis part, loss of normal collagen architecture, an increased amount of protoglycans, and general breakdown of the tissue organization. So I've got another picture here. If you can see that one, you can see this part which has been enlarged. You can see the tissue is sort of ruptured and it is uneven. So a normal Achilles tendon, all the fibers, the collagen fibers, run straight up and down in nice, neat rows, a bit like a highway. But when you get tendinopathy, all of those collagen fibers aren't running nicely in straight lines anymore. They're sort of all over the place, and often there's a bit of scar tissue in there as well. So it disrupts the linearity of the collagen fibers. So basically these structural changes in the tendon result in what we call increased cross-sectional area, so it's a thicker tendon, reduced tendon stiffness, so it's also weaker, unfortunately, and altered viscoelastic properties. Now what that means is basically that it's weaker and it's less efficient in its elastic response to loading. Okay, so the injury mechanism, how do we do this? So Achilles tendon is mechanoresponsive, meaning it will adapt to loading demands placed on the tissue. And although the exact cause of a tendinopathy does vary, the most common cause in athletes is excessive loading with inadequate recovery time. And this gets reported about 60 to 80% of the time. It's typically what we call a training load error. However, you don't have to be involved in sport to get an Achilles tendon problem. Can be just your daily sort of work activities, or general sort of day-to-day sort of things. So it doesn't have to be sport related. Even if you're just happen to, I don't know, go walking in a different area and you happen to be walking up hills more, then that causes the increased compression of the Achilles tendon, because you're in dorsiflexion, your foot's having to walk uphill like that, puts more strain on the tendon. So something as simple as that can cause Achilles tendinopathy. In terms of risk factors for developing Achilles tendinopathy, it's considered, it's what we'd say is multifactorial. So risk factors relating to decreased load tolerance of the tendon or movement patterns that overload the tendon include things like decreased calf strength, so the plantar flexor muscle, so that gastroc and that soleus muscle might be weaker. Deficits in hip neuromuscular controls. You might have a weakness around your hips, which causes, let's say, your knee to move inwards, and it puts more stress on the Achilles tendon in that way. You might have stiffness in the ankle joint, so stiffness in terms of being able to dorsiflex, which is pull your toes up or pull your foot upwards. And if you've got a reduced range of movement there, can cause increased load into the tendon as well. Things like increased foot pronation, increased body weight, again, training load errors, which I mentioned, decreased recovery time, which is also related to training. But even so, you can have some sort of genetic disease, which might vary the strength of your tendon, or some other tissue in your body which impacts the tendon. Or you might just have a family history of tendinopathy, so that can also be related as well. One other interesting thing I should mention is that the use of antibiotics, if I can pronounce this properly, is fluoroquinolone, has been related to both tendinopathy and also tendon rupture, so be careful with that one. Now the good news, after all that bad news, is that the prospects for recovery from Achilles tendinopathy are actually pretty good. However, full recovery from Achilles tendinopathy does take time. It typically takes 6 months to a year or more. It requires a considerable effort over a longer period of time, and as a result, most people, unfortunately, get bored halfway through their recovery. Hence, they might not put in the effort they need to over a longer period enough time, and so there are often high re-injury rates with Achilles tendinopathy, something like 27 to 44%. So pretty high. But anyway, all that aside, so now you've got a bit of a background of what Achilles tendinopathy is, what it's diagnosed, how it occurs, risk factors, etc. Now we should talk about, the recovery process and really our sort of recovery protocol, if you like. Now I've broken it up into phases, and the first phase is what we call symptom management and load reduction. So the first phase might only last a couple of weeks, so it might not last very long. And typically at this stage, you'll have pain with movement, you'll have pain with pretty much all activities, and struggle to do certainly one-legged heel raises would be quite difficult. And at this stage, this first phase, we're going to do loading intensity, fairly low loading intensity, up to 100% of your body weight, so up to full body weight, but no extra weight there. But you might even need to reduce the loading a little bit. So you might need to use less than 100% of your body weight. You might need to even do this in a hydrotherapy pool, for example, to reduce your body weight, if it's that severe. And really the goal at this stage is really just to start the exercise, get a feel for the injury and learn, I guess, how to monitor it. And so what we're going to do, so to start with, we want to perform these exercises once a day. And the first thing you want to do is just like a circulation exercise. So basically moving your ankle like this, just forward and back, up and down. So you're just moving the tendon itself, creating some blood flow into the area and just getting it moving. And then we want to start doing, and you might do say 50 of those, for example, just lightly. And then we'd start into the actual exercises. So to begin with, we're going to do two-legged heel raises, standing on the floor. We want to aim for about 3 sets of 10 to 15 of these. Now, of course, you might not get to 10 to start with. You might not get to 3 sets to start with. Start with whatever you can and gradually build it up over the first couple of weeks. The same goes for all of these other exercises. Now, the second exercise you want to do is one-legged heel raise, standing on the floor. So again, we're aiming for 3 sets of 10, but just do what you can to start with. And then the third exercise we want to do at this stage is what we call eccentric heel rises, standing on the floor. So again, with 2 legs, eccentric means basically you're going to rise up onto your toes at a normal speed, but you're going to slowly lower your heels down towards the floor. So you might do that over, let's say, 3 to 5 seconds. So yeah, 3 sets of 10 of those. And then the last exercise we're going to do is sitting heel raises. And again, we're aiming for 3 sets of 10. So this is all in that first phase, symptom management and load reduction phase. Okay, the second phase, which carries on from the first phase and might be run from, say, I'm just estimating here, but might run from weeks 2 to 5, for example. But you might need longer as well. So if it runs, weeks 2 to 6, 2 to 7, that's fine. Now I should mention too, if you've got insertional tendinopathy, so insertional Achilles tendinopathy, then that means pain at the very bottom of the tendon. Then keep doing your exercises on the floor, okay? But if you have one of the other types of Achilles tendinopathy, then you can start doing your exercises on the edge of a step. Now, again, at this stage, you've probably still got pain with exercise. This is our recovery phase. That's what I'm calling this stage. We've still got pain with exercise, we've still got morning stiffness, but it's maybe a little bit less than before. The load on the Achilles tendon, we're going to increase it by increasing the speed of movement and starting to add some external extra weight. So the goal at this stage is just to regain the strength of the calf and improve the Achilles tendon tolerance to load. That's what the whole program is about, just improving our tolerance to load. Now, in terms of the exercises, we want to do two-legged heel raises on the edge of a step if you can. If you have the insertional tendinopathy, just do it on the flat. Now we're building this up till, we want to go up to 3 lots of 15 reps. We want to do one-legged heel raises, standing on the edge of a step if you're able to. Again, 3 lots of 15. Eccentric heel raises, which is the normal speed up and the slow lowering, standing on the edge of the step. Again, 3 lots of 15. Sitting heel raises, again, we're doing 3 lots of 15. So we just carried on and built up on what we did in the first phase, basically. But now we're introducing another one. We want to do some quick rebounding movements. So heel raises, basically, if you can see my hands here, you'd go up and you'd drop your heels and go up quickly. Drop your heels, go up quickly. So you'd be going like that. So quick rebounding. And we want to start doing maybe 3 lots of 20 of those. And again, as I said before, if you can't do 3 sets, just do what you can, do 2 sets, whatever. If you can't do 20, do 15, do 10, and just build it up slowly. Now the idea with the rebounding is we're starting to introduce some quicker movements, which is going to be leading on to some plyometrics down the track. Now the third phase, once we've passed our recovery phase, which was the second one, is what we call the rebuilding phase. And this runs a bit longer because it's really the main sort of strength building phase. So that takes time. So it might run from weeks 3 to 12, depending on how quickly you've been progressing through the other stages. And again, if you've got the insertional tendinopathy, all of these exercises are done on the flat, not on the edge of a step. Okay, at this stage, we'd expect you to be tolerating the exercise pretty well. There's no pain at the distal tendon and possibly decreased morning stiffness. In terms of the loading, we're starting to build up to heavier weights or heavier loading now, and we're introducing a bit more of the plyometric training as well. So we want to transition into a bit of heavier strength training for those calf muscles. In terms of the actual exercises, we want to be doing them every day, except some days are going to be heavy. So the heavy days we might do every second or third day, whereas the other days we're just doing normal body weight, sort of lighter loads, if you like. So in terms of the exercises that we're going to do at this stage, we want to do one-legged heel raises with extra weight. And so on your lighter days, you might just add, I don't know, let's say 5 to 10 kilos extra weight. On the heavy days, you're loading up quite a lot. So maybe 30% of your body weight if you can. You know, you've got to build it up slowly though. So you're not going to jump straight into that. You're going to start light and then add weight gradually. The second exercise we want to do is eccentric heel raises. Again, standing on the edge of a step with the added weight. And again, we want to do 3 sets of 15. We want to do sitting heel raises. Again, 3 sets of 15. The quick rebounding heel raises, 3 sets of 20. And now we're starting to do some plyometric exercise. So something like squat jumps to start with, something bilateral, 2-footed to begin with. And then over time, over like 4, 8, 12 weeks, you might gradually progress to doing single leg sort of squat jumps or some sort of bounding exercise or something that involves unilateral or single leg plyometric force. Now, the last phase, which takes much longer, and this is the point where most people drop out of their rehab, and which is why there is so much recurrence of Achilles tendinopathy. This phase might last from 3 to 6 months, or longer if needed, 12 months even. Pain, you wouldn't expect much pain on a day-to-day basis. You wouldn't, in fact, you should be tolerating sport quite well at this stage. So, and that would be a sign to obviously progress. But we're progressing from the previous phase to include more sport-specific type movements in terms of loading, speed and change of directions. So we're returning to full sport participation. So it's going to take at least 3 months to get to this stage, possibly 6 months. But in terms of the exercises, we're only doing them 2 to 3 times a week now. So just on those heavy sort of days. And we're doing the one-legged heel raises, standing on the edge of a step if you don't have the insertional tendinopathy, 3 sets of 15. We're doing the eccentric heel raises with the added weight, 3 sets of 15. We're doing quick rebounding heel raises, 3 sets of 20. And we're doing our sport-specific plyometric training as well, which I won't go into the details of that sort of thing because it's a whole field on its own, and we need a lot more time than we've got today. But that's pretty much it. That's the last phase of the program. So you've got your symptom management and load reduction phase to start with. You've got your recovery phase, which is the second bit. Then we've got a rebuilding phase, and then we've got our return to sport phase. So now I hope you have learned something out of today's session. You know a little bit more about Achilles tendinopathy. If you have, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. We are releasing more of these videos from week to week, and you want to be notified about them as soon as we release them, so hit that bell button as well. Don't forget, on EnergizeMeFitness, we've got lots of fitness videos in Pilates, high intensity interval training, stretching, yoga, that sort of thing. Got a whole bunch of those videos there. And I'm also going to be putting on this program onto the website with not just the, and I'll go into detail, it'll have all of the stuff for the Achilles tendinopathy, but also addressing all the other biomechanical factors that often contribute and part of the, I guess, the risk factors of developing Achilles tendinopathy. So it'll be a complete program. So you'll be able to see that on the website pretty soon. So thank you for watching today. Hope you got something out of it. We'll see you next time.